good evening, and welcome once again to another edition of our Government at Work program, a program brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly, Keith Scarborough. It's another wonderful Thursday evening here on the island of Nevis, and it's a time when we look forward to bringing you the information as it pertains to the continued developments taking place here on the island of Nevis. As we continue to move upwards and onwards as a people, there are positive signs of growth taking place in all areas of the Nevis economy, and each week we are happy to focus on at least one of those areas to ensure that you become more aware of the positive strides that are being made in this beautiful little island of ours. This program is broadcast live on VON Radio every Thursday evening from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Then we broadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evenings from 8:30 p.m. If you are unable to listen to our live broadcast at any time, this program can be seen on YouTube shortly thereafter. I remind you at this time that our Bird's Eye View program continues to be aired on Nevis Television every Tuesday evening from 7:15 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Then we broadcast on a Wednesday evening at the same time. Additionally, I am pleased to inform you that our Bird's Eye View program can now be seen on Facebook. We shall take a short break, and when I return, I shall introduce my guest for this evening's program to you. So stay logged on to the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio 860.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. There's something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Folks, I am pleased to have as my guest this evening Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Mr. John Hanley. Mr. Hanley, good evening and welcome once again to our Government at Work program.
Good evening, Mr. Scarborough. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure having you, Mr. Hanley. Like I said, for the last few months, you have been quite busy. How are you holding up?
Well, in the tourism industry, busy is good because that means we're getting a lot accomplished.
Okay,
and I thank you for the opportunity that you've given to me to share things that have been taking place over the last several months.
The pleasure is all mine. Now, we have quite a lot to discuss this evening, so let's get straight into it. Mr. Hanley, in the past few months, activities at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park has been phenomenal. It started with a very successful Mango Festival, which we shall speak of in a bit, since you were an integral part of that success story. It continued right throughout the Culturama 50 celebration, and we shall speak of that as well. But as I said earlier, I want to start with the Mango Festival, since this is the first time you have been on this program since that event. Share your overall experience with our listeners and viewers, including your role in that successful festival.
Well, first of all, I want to say that the Mango Festival 2024 was deemed an outstanding success, not only by our staff who participated in this event, but also by the persons who attended the event. Even some persons who were usually very critical, some persons who were very critical last year when we had some challenges, even those persons had to admit this year that Mango Festival 2024 was indeed an outstanding success. And it was very important to be successful this year because this year marked the 10th anniversary of the Nevis Mango Festival. So we had to make it bigger and better. As most persons are aware, this event is spearheaded by the Nevis Tourism Authority, and it is also a collaborative effort with other stakeholders, including the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Agriculture. Of course, it being a food-based event, a culinary event. So I want to give kudos to the staff at the Nevis Tourism Authority, led by Devon Liebert, and he was closely assisted by Fayon Jones and the entire team at the NTA. This year, for the first time, we brought on board a consultant, Noah Mills, him and his team, and they brought quite a bit of support to the Nevis Mango Festival. My role, I'm a member of the board of the Nevis Tourism Authority, and along with the directors, we were a part of the steering committee. So we made some of the key decisions regarding the Nevis Mango Festival. But the actual implementation, that was down to the staff at the NTA, supported by their stakeholder agencies, and the consultant, Noah Mills and his team. Over 2,500 persons, I'm told, attended the event on the Sunday. And we had other events because it went from the Thursday to the Sunday. So we also had many hundreds of persons attending the other events. One of the things that was very different about the Mango Fest this year was that on the Sunday evening we had a homegrown talent concert, and that was very well received. We also had a food tour on the Saturday, and this took on a somewhat different twist. In the past, it was usually a self-guided tour. You were given a map and you were told that these are the 8 or the 10 places around the island where you could sample the local cuisine. This year, it took the form of a party bus style tour. So persons were able to buy a package, which included a bottle, a t-shirt, and some other branded items, and they were actually taken on the tour. So it was a curated and a festive event, and it was very well received.
Tell me a little bit about the Noah and his team, because a lot of people seem to be giving him a lot of credit for this success we had this year, for the 10th anniversary. Tell me exactly, if you know, that is, what new initiatives that was brought to the fore as a result of Noah being on the team this year?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the team at the Tourism Authority, they have a lot of creative ideas, but we just felt that because we wanted to be sure that the 10th anniversary came off with a bang, we at the board, we were willing to give the team, the very good team at the NTA, that extra support to make absolutely sure that the event came off well. Noah Mills, as anyone who knows Noah Mills, would know that he has a lot of experience in terms of event organization, in terms of the strategic business support that he lends to events, and that was primarily his role, to assist us to make some more business sense of the event, and also to make sure that certain things were streamlined, and also to make sure that there was a creative element. So some things that we didn't have on board in 2022, we had them on 2023 rather, we had them on board for this year. So his role was to help us with the logistics, and also to guide us in terms of some new ideas, and also in terms of the implementation of the logistics on the day of.
Now, during the 2023 Mango Festival, we had a large crowd attending, much more than you had catered for, and unfortunately, some persons missed out on some of what was being offered. But this year, we saw the largest Mango Festival crowd ever, and there was more than enough food and drink for all. Tell us a little about this year's planning and what the feedback has been like from citizens and residents and visitors alike since then.
Well, as I said before, even our harshest critics have considered that the event was overwhelmingly successful. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. We made some changes. We used up the entire park, because one of the bits of feedback that we had last year was that the persons probably felt a bit clustered. And so we opened up the event to include the park. We had more tents, of course, and we also used the area in the vicinity of the amphitheater also. We had multiple entrances, because last year persons were saying that they had a very long wait. The sun was very hot and they had to wait in line very long. This year we had many entrances, and the delay time at these entrances was very minimal from my own observation and from what was reported to me. We had abundant food. We had no running out of food. We had more than enough, because this year we engaged over 50 chefs. So there was absolutely enough food for everyone. And this year, something else different that we did is that we offered a VIP experience. So we had experiences on different levels. If persons just wanted to come in to see the grounds and to just for the purpose of going to the concert, we had what was called the Limers Pass. So that was one experience that was offered. If you wanted to have the samples, there were different tiers. You know, you could have had 5 or 10 or 15, as the case may be, tickets or samples. And then the VIP experience, if you wanted to be seated and specially catered to and be pampered, as it were. I believe, did I say you in VIP?
I was there.
Yes, okay. So you can recall what I'm talking about. So that experience where you take it up a little notch, we had that VIP experience. So as I said before, persons were very satisfied with the experience overall.
Now, every year you brought in, you will bring a head chef. This year you had a head chef as well. Tell us a little about this chef that was part of the Sunday's activity. Well, not just Sundays, but the whole Mango Festival period.
All right, we had this chef from New York. I think his restaurant is called Fat Fowl. So every year we bring somebody. Well, as you notice, it's an African American. So it inspires doing that, bringing in somebody who looks like us, but is from overseas. It inspires our local chefs. Okay, if somebody from the U.S. can set up their own restaurant, can be featured on the media in the U.S. Even I, as a small chef on a little island, can do the same thing. So that was the inspiration behind that.
Okay, a role model, really.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this event has now become not only the premier event for the NTA and the Ministry of Tourism, but a calendar event for the island and people of Nevis. Tell us a little about your hard-working team that is behind this major event. You started a little earlier mentioning a couple of names, but I'm sure they are. Tell us a little about some of those persons.
Yes, so as I indicated earlier, the NTA team, the Nevis Tourism Authority team, they were the engine behind this event. And I want to point out that the event was created by former NTA CEO Greg Phillip. As a matter of fact, Greg Phillip was honored at during the opening ceremony for Mango Festival 10, which was held at the Botanical Gardens. And of course, he was very appreciative of the recognition. The reason he invented this event is because he always believed that this off-season phenomenon that we have in Nevis, it is something that we need to lessen. We may not be able to do away with it entirely, but Greg Phillip always felt that it is important to do something in the slow season or the so-called off-season to minimize that impact of having less visitors and so on. So creating an event was something that was created to achieve that objective. And of course, the Ministry of Tourism collaborated with the staff at the NTA, and I mentioned some of the names. The Director of Sales and Marketing, Fayon Jones, he was one of the main persons and supported by all the other members of the excellent team that you have at the Tourism Authority. We also collaborated. Some of our staff were involved in the steering committee, and we also, some of our staff were volunteers, especially on the Sunday event. And the collaboration between the Ministry of Tourism and the Nevis Tourism Authority is something that we have been pushing to strengthen and foster. Both of us deal with tourism. A lot of people don't know the difference between the ministry and the tourism authority. The ministry deals with developing the product, while the tourism authority deals with marketing and promoting the product. So we have been trying over the years to collaborate, to work together, because after all, it is one destination.
Sure.
So we were only too happy to assist and to help the Nevis Tourism Authority. So even though they were the entity that created the event and spearheaded the event, we were only too happy to assist them in terms of hosting the event, because After all, it is a Nevis event and it is a tourism event, and both entities are involved in that. So the Nevis Tourism Authority has created this event, which has become a highly anticipated event. When I say highly anticipated, it is looked forward to with a similar level of anticipation as the, let's say, the St. Kitts Music Festival or White Sands or the St. Kitts Bill Festival. It has that level of anticipation. And people are, I'm sure, are already looking forward to Mango Festival 2025.
That leads me to my next question. I know it's only been 2.5 months since that event was held, but this event has gotten so big that I have to ask you this question. Has the planning for the 2025 Mango Festival started as yet?
Oh yes. We have realized the sort of momentum that was generated as a result of the 10th anniversary Nevis Mango Festival. And planning has already started insofar that the date for the 2025 event has already been set. So save the date, July 3rd to 6th, 2025. July 3rd to 6th, 2025. Those are the dates for the next Mango Festival. And we have done extensive review internally to assess what our triumphs have been, some of which I've shared with you. And we have also looked at a few things that could have been done differently, but our overall assessment has been, we have really been able to move it from point A to point B, and we want to continue that momentum and also to expand our reach.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that continual momentum, because, when there's a 50th or 5th anniversary or 10th anniversary, 15th and 20th, you go the extra mile. And then when there's the in-betweens, we don't see that level of, pushing to make sure it's successful. So are we going to see the same intense Mango Festival and well-planned Mango Festival like we saw this year? Because this year was intense, so extra effort was made. Are we going to be seeing the same extra effort put in? Because like you rightfully said, this event is growing bigger and bigger. It's taking on its own legs and running. So,
well, we have set the bar at the Nevis Tourism Authority, and even locally, our division populace, they're very demanding and very discerning and very discriminating. So it would not be in our best interest to set the bar in 1 year and then the next year we give them any old thing. So it is incumbent on us to make sure that there's some consistency in in the standards. When you look at the St. Kitts Music Festival, when they had the 25th anniversary, it was, they did something extra, but the following year, they pretty much kept it at a similar level. So that is what we intend to do.
Okay, so the general public could expect a similar thing or even better in 2025.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, great. Now, one of the things I observed the organizers, which is Ministry of Tourism and the NTA, did last year was to bring in a public relations team to capture as much of the event as possible. Tell us the purpose of that, really. What is it they intend to do with that, those recordings?
Well, it is very important to record, what is going on in terms of our tourism product, in terms of our events. So that is why we have, the Nevis Tourism Authority has a public relations team, a team that's responsible for marketing, and we have to involve them in everything that we do, because we have to make sure that there's consistent messaging that there exists between us and the persons in the market that we're trying to target. Also, it's important to document what we're doing so that when we are doing our plans for the following year, then we can look back and say, okay, we want to continue with this, we want to tweak this and bring in something different. So it is very important to have that public relations.
And then part of my understanding as well is that this recording is being used to further market Nevis in all different areas, of course, to the outside world.
Correct.
So I think it was a good move on behalf of the ministry.
Yeah, so when we're doing the ads and the promos for 2020, we can use clips of what happened in 2024 and push for the promotion.
Sure. Okay, let's move on, Mr. Hanley, because immediately following the Mango Festival, we had the Culture Arm of 50 activities that began at the MJR. And the MJR was bubbling with activities of all sorts, large and small. It ended with one of the largest food fairs ever held here on the island of Nevis. But prior to that, you had activities such as Tropics, which was also a big one, Culture Armor Ball, the Premier's Cocktail, which in my view was one of the best ones we ever had. And the list goes on and on and on. Tell us how you were able to host all of these events at the park with such small a staff.
Well, I have to agree with you that the events were really of a high standard. I could recall the cultural arm fair, the food fair. I have attended most of them, and this year's event was bigger, it was better. I was able to get all those cultural delicacies that I really like. So I have to agree with you that we had some really good events. As to your question in terms of how we were able to manage all these events with such a small staff, first of all, I must say that we have an exceptional staff at the MGRP. Our staff, and we made sure that when we brought the staff on board, the staff was properly recruited, and we selected them scientifically to make sure that we had the very best on board, and that has been to our benefit. So we have an excellent staff at the park, and they go above and beyond the call of duty. And they, at this point in time, have about 3 years of experience working with large events. So experience is very important. You have a big event coming up, and you did something similar last year, so you have an idea as to how to handle it. And I must point out, though, that some of the events that come to the park, they have their own logistics team. So, for example, the Cultural Armor Fair, you have that whole, Karen Amory and all those, Abo has, all those persons in place, subcommittees and so on that deal with the specific logistics. And therefore, they come to our staff, they say what needs to take place, and the staff just has to dialogue with them to make sure that what is on paper, what is in plan, is actually implemented on the ground. I want to point out, as a third point to that question, that the park was purpose-built for these events. I can recall that we looked at about 3 different designs when we were designing the park. Vincent Lai from Taiwan, he's the one who came up with the design. And we picked the design that had a big open space, because we were bearing in mind that before the park was built, Cultural Armor Food Fair used to be held on the site. So we wanted to make sure that after the park was built, that it would continue to host similar events. So the layout of the park, the design, I think that also contributes to facilitating the staff and the organizers to host these events.
I remember in the early days, one of the concerns that you had is the damage that could be done, especially to the landscaping, if major functions such as the food fair were allowed to be held there. But the evidence has shown that there is no need to fear anymore. That has to be a good feeling for you, really.
Well, the concern was valid in the early days, because we had just put in the plans, and plans take a certain time to establish themselves. So it's now been, this year would make the 3rd anniversary of the park. It's when the 19th of December of this year would make the 3rd anniversary of MGRP. The plans have certainly gotten a lot more mature. The other day I was marveling to one of the members of staff. I remember when, along with the Deputy Governor General and some of the Premier and some of the dignitaries, we planted some coconut trees in the vicinity of the amphitheater, and those trees are now bearing, those coconut trees. So, time has really brought a lot of maturity to these plants. So the plants have gotten a lot hardier. They've gotten an opportunity to establish themselves, to be mature, and that has facilitated, the park being able to accommodate large crowds, without us being that fearful about any damage to the plants. Something else I want to point out is that the park management, whenever somebody comes to us and tells us that they want to host an event at the park, they have to fill out the form. So we have an idea whether the event is going to include 25 persons or 2,500 persons. So depending on the number of persons who are expected to attend the event, then we would be able to put a certain number of security personnel in place. So having a certain ratio between patrons and security personnel, that helps us to keep things under control. And speaking of keeping things under control, the rules of the park are posted all around, and I think over the years, especially the locals coming to the park over and over again, they have gotten accustomed to the rules. So all of these reasons help us to be less concerned or less fearful about the vegetation and the softscape, as it were, compared to the beginning.
In terms of the security, you say when there's a large event, do you bring other security on board, or you just use your own security there for whether the crowd is large or small?
Well, we only have a limited number of security officers at the park. So if you have 2,500 persons, then the organizers of the event would be responsible for bringing additional security personnel.
Okay. Now, following the Cultural Armor 50 events, we had the Restaurant Week, another fast-going event. But tell us a little about that. How did that unfold? Because we haven't heard much about it.
Okay, we had some good responses from the restaurants signing up. I think we had about 20 or so restaurants, eateries and restaurants that signed up. Our key ingredient this year was papaya. I don't think the response to papaya was as enthusiastic because papaya is not as universally loved as
mango,
as pineapple. Well, not mango, because we deliberately excluded mango from Restaurant Week because that is the Nevis Mango Festival's prerogative. So even though papaya was not as popular as pineapple the previous year, or as coconut in one of the other years, we still had some good feedback and some very good menus. I would have gone to some of the restaurants and sampled the menus, and I was very satisfied. One thing I can say about our restaurants and our chefs on Nevis, they are very creative. No matter what the ingredient is, they know how to, make amazing dishes. I remember one year we had yam, and yam is about the blandest tasting thing that you could think of. Maybe second only to cassava. No taste to speak of in that vegetable. But when you saw the savory and the sweet dishes that they were able to come up with from yam, I was completely amazed. So the same was true this year with papaya. In terms of what could be considered the signature event, the tasting showcase, we were not able to host that this year, unfortunately. We had some logistical challenges. I think probably the tasting showcase date was probably too close to the Mango Fest. So that, among other things, we decided not to have the tasting showcase. But we are continuing to do our planning. We're going to plan early for Restaurant Week 2025. I want to point out that as a follow-up to Restaurant Week, we had the Independence Committee reach out to us, and they wanted to have a number of restaurants on both Nevis and St. Kitts, showcasing the national dish of St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as some other dishes. And so I think across the Federation, we have about a dozen restaurants who are participating in this venture. So things like this, I think, are very good spin-offs of the Restaurant Week initiative. It is, of course, a national initiative. It is the St. Kitts and Nevis Restaurant Week, and it is one of those ideas or one of those programs where the ministries of tourism on both islands get to work together. And working together, as I said earlier in this program, is very important, because whether we're talking about one island, one destination, two islands, one paradise, whatever concept you want to look at, it's very important for people to work together, because you achieve certain synergies, you achieve certain things that it's difficult to achieve, difficult or impossible to achieve on your own.
One of the concerns raised by some is that the Restaurant Week was a a little close to the Mango Festival, and right after the Mango Festival, we had the 50th anniversary of Culturama. So the restaurant week kind of get caught up. Is there a particular time to have this restaurant week, or is it a set?
Well, the dates are usually set by collaboration between the Ministry of Tourism in St. Kitts and the one here in Nevis that I'm responsible for. It usually takes place around the middle of July. That's been ballpark the time.
Yes.
A little bit before the start of Culturama.
And right after the Mango Festival.
Yes, after the Mango Festival. What we have pointed out though is that both teams on both islands, we're going to sit down and we're going to carefully assess what is the optimal time to make sure that our stakeholders and Nevis are satisfied that it's the most workable. But we have every wish for the Mango Festival to work. That has already been clearly established as the first weekend in July, and over the past years, Restaurant Week has been wrapping around the second to the third weekend in July. And then, of course, Culturama is like the 20th of July wrapping over to the top of August. So we want to see if that model can continue to work. If not, then we'd have to go back to the drawing board and do certain things.
Because one was thinking that maybe the first weekend after Culturama is finished, with people still around from the Culturama, might be a good time to have that restaurant week, because the restaurant week has legs to grow and become a major event as well. But because the way it is lodged right between that Mango Fest and the start of Culturama, it is not getting the more support. It gets support, but it could get a lot more support if the date was different. That's my thought.
Yes, I agree that we do need to tweak on the time, but it's a two-edged sword, because on one hand, we want to stimulate business at a time of the year when restaurants don't usually get that much business. It doesn't make sense to do restaurant week, let's say, during the middle of festive, because one way or another, the restaurants are already getting a lot of business. But during that slow time when things are, really down quite a lot from what it usually is, that's the time when we want to boost the business and encourage people to try locals. A lot of persons in Nevis never went to some of these restaurants before we had Restaurant Week, but having gotten that experience through Restaurant Week, then you're seeing a lot more locals having their celebrations, their birthdays, their anniversaries, etc. at the local restaurants because of the impact of Restaurant Week.
Do you have events on St. Kitts as part of the Restaurant Week, or all of the events is on Nevis?
Well, as I said, it's St. Kitts and Nevis Restaurant Week, so you have events on both islands.
Okay.
One of the signature events that St. Kitts had was the St. Kitts Grill Festival, which was basically a grill competition. I think there were about there were at least a dozen participants, and they competed in the areas of chicken, fish, poultry, and lobster. So it was a big event. You had about 3,000 people. It took place on the Frigate Bellon, close to where that roundabout is, close to the Marriott.
Yes.
Yeah, so it took place in that area. This is the second year they've had it during Restaurant Week, and it has been a great success.
Okay, great. Now, we just celebrated the 41st anniversary of independence. Were there any activities held at the park on this occasion?
Yes, we had a number of private events at the park, but none of these events were specifically hosted by the Ministry of Tourism. But you had events by different government departments, and you had several private events at the park.
Now, could you give us an idea as to what the bookings look like for the rest of 2024 at the park? Because it's a place that really been attracting many activities, many events, both large and small. Another 3 months to go. Could you give us an idea as to the bookings?
Bookings are looking very solid as we look towards the end of the year. The park continues to host a number of private, corporate, and government events, and we have already received some events even up to the Christmas season. This year we again intend to host something that we call Christmas in the Park. And we have, the specific events, we have not decided them yet for 2025, but I can share with you some of the events that we had last year or in previous years. We had a Christmas tree ornament making workshop. And interestingly enough, we engaged the Cicely Brown Integrated School, which some people better know as the Special Education Unit. And it was amazing to see that these children took empty plastic bottles, they took things that you would normally throw away, bottle caps, all of that, and they made the most amazing Christmas ornaments. As a matter of fact, we had 2 Christmas trees at MGR. We had one in the garden in front, and we had one inside right under the dome of the visitor center. And we didn't go to Houseford and TDC, and we used those same ornaments created by the children, and we decorated our trees. And the children also learned the importance of reuse, reduce, recycle, those sustainable concepts, and also, because the focus was on Christmas ornaments, you also were able to bring in some of the Christmas cheer. We have also had a concert at the park by the Shelley's Classical Choir. That one was very well received. I think we had almost 250 persons in attendance. Very well received event. In the past, we have also had art in the park as a showcase where local artists put forward their productions, their pieces. And I believe it was last year that Jamia Claxton and his friends hosted a kids fair, a kids zone. I can't remember the exact name that they used to describe it, but that's the general idea. They had a kids fair at the park, and that was also very well attended. So we want to have something similar this year, and when the details are finalized, we will share that with the general public.
Speaking of the Christmas tree lighting, brought something to my attention. Charlestown normally have the Christmas tree lighting in the heart of Charlestown, and it is getting too big for the location. I am thinking that it may be good to have that Christmas tree lighting for St. Paul's at the park. It's something for you to consider.
Something to think
well,
about.
not you, but for them to consider. And 'cause I think that will be a perfect place, because in the days gone by, we used to have it right next to the Paramount Cinema. That's where
I remember.
Right, that's where it used to be. So I am thinking that area may be perfect to have the Charleston Christmas tree lighting, because like I say, the one in town is getting a little too big for that particular area, and it messes with the traffic quite a bit as well.
Okay, we will see where that. We'll have some conversations and see where that
Yes, I think it's worth to have a conversation about that. Now, the fees for the use of the park are quite reasonable, but with so many events being held at the park nowadays, some much needed funds are being generated, not only for the Ministry of Tourism and the NTA, but for the NIA as well. Do you think that with perhaps an even further uptake in activities at the park, that the MGR could become someday a major contributor to the financial coffers of the NIA?
Well, the fees that we charge are actually nominal compared to the actual cost of running the park. It costs the government hundreds of thousands of dollars to run the park, because you have to pay for salaries, you have to pay for agrochemicals, environmentally friendly agrochemicals. You have to pay for lawn care equipment, etc. And that really costs quite a lot. But the fees that are generated by the park, they do go a long way in terms of helping the government to at least recover some of the costs. And it's very important that we have that recovery, because MGR Park, because of what it is, we have to maintain it at a certain level. I've been to a lot of parks around the Caribbean, and you have, everything just anywhere. There's no careful thought about how the landscaping is laid out. The grass is knee high, and But at MGR Park, we make sure that the grass is well manicured. We make sure that the spaces are comfortable. The children have a good playground to play in, etc. And all of that costs. I want to point out, though, that the park is not primarily an income generator.
I know.
It is a place of public recreation, and a place where we want to encourage entrepreneurship, especially in what is called the orange economy. The orange economy refers to the entertainment industry. So persons in the local community, if they're interested in hosting events and that sort of thing, the park is a perfect venue for persons to explore those opportunities and those possibilities.
The reason why I speak of the financial contribution is because there's so many activities, and yes, while the cost is reasonable, it adds up over time, and I'm just seeing that in years to come it could pay for itself. That was my line of thinking.
You see, it's a delicate balance between, okay, there's a customer willingness to pay, and you know, there's a balance that you have to strike, such that you don't take your price up too high, and then persons aren't able to afford. And we also have to bear in mind that there are other places persons could go to host the events, community centers, etc. But we keep our price at a certain level so that the large percentage of our clientele, the locals, can continue to afford using the park.
Sure. Now, since the park has become such a major attraction with so many activities, are there any plans to increase the staff at the park?
Good question. There are no plans to increase the staffing at the park proper, but I want to point out that now that you have the Pinnis Beach Enhancement Project, which is virtually completed, that new area, that newly enhanced area, will fall under the management of the park. And of course, if we have an increased area, then we need to have a few additional persons to help us to take care of the new area. The park proper is something like 8 acres in extent, and the whole area from the main road down to the sea, including the new area, that's approximately 14 acres. So that's quite a large area to take care of. So yes, the short answer to the question is not in the park itself, but we will take on a few new persons to help us to take care of the new area.
Okay. Now, speaking of the new area, I want to look now at what I call phase 2 of the Pinnis Development Project, which of course is the closer to the sea part of it, because that too is fast becoming the place to go to for all things joyful, including food, relaxation, entertainment, etc. That section has really captured the heart and soul of all who have seen it. It has also attracted much more vehicular and human traffic since its completion. You have been heavily involved in that project from the start, so share your thoughts with us on the work that has been done on this particular phase of the Pinnis development.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the ICDF, the Taiwanese Technical Mission, and through them, the funding for this project has been made possible. As I can recall, the value of the project is in the vicinity of $3.3 million US. It's interesting that this project actually costs more than the building of the park. It could be because of inflation over time, but I think as far as I can recall, the park costs $2.7 million US, and this new project costs $3.3 million US. It's very pleasing aesthetically, and of course I want to also give some commendation to the project manager, Mr. Michael Perkins. He was responsible for organizing, many of the day-to-day logistics, and I think everyone is quite pleased with what is there now compared to what was there before. What you had before was a set of road tracks. You had a lot of puddles, and it was not very pleasing to look at. However, at the moment, you have well-drained roads. You have electronic billboards. It's just a lot better than it was before in terms of the way it looks. And I spoke of billboards a while ago. A deliberate inclusion in the project was these LCD screens, these digital screens, because they wanted to incorporate what is called the smart city concept. So at the end of the day, we are having something which not only looks good, but something that is on the cutting edge in terms of technology. Well,
folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is Mr. John Hanley, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. We shall take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions here on Government at Work.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Mr. Hanley, are there still more work to be done on this phase, phase 2 as I call it, or the project is now fully completed?
As I understand it, we still have to install some street lights, and there's a bit of work to be done to the sewage system, but those two things accepted, I believe that we are pretty much complete.
Okay.
To the point where the area is essentially functional. People are using just about all the facilities, the driveways and so on.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us a little about the daily operations on this particular phase, in terms of the staff, what the responsibilities are and so forth.
Okay, as I said, the area will be governed by the MGR Park. So in terms of the security operations, they would be governed. Well, before the enhancements were done, we had security officers, so they will be a little more vigilant now. They would have to play an increased role in terms of monitoring the traffic, because now you have some one-way in some one-way areas and you have to go around certain areas and so on. So the general public will need some guidance in terms of how to flow through this area. We're going to also put some more signage in the area. We saw some entertainment potential down at the beach. During C50 we had some promotional events at different bars. So that is something that will be explored over time. I hinted at it earlier, but let me point out the drainage. We have gotten feedback that the drainage, and from my observations as well, the drainage in the area has improved significantly because the way these streets are designed, they're drains to the side, they're culverts that drain water into the pond, and then the pond funnels the water. The overflow from the pond goes into shallow gut. So no longer do you see these puddles of water sitting on the tracks that used to exist before, but it is a much more pleasing visual that we have down on the beach.
Sure. We
encourage, of course, the business stakeholders and the patrons, the people who use the beach, to keep it clean. That's very important. We have our staff who will do what they need to do, but it is not the Ministry of Tourism's responsibility to keep the beach clean. It is everybody's responsibility. Sure. So you go on the beach, you buy some food from one of the restaurants, dispose of the containers. And don't, sometimes, especially after big events, people in Nevis have this tendency to just throw things on the ground. And I find that disappointing because I know the Ministry of Tourism has one of the best tourism education programs, starting from primary school right up to sixth form. So we teach tourism extensively in the schools. And I'm a little disappointed sometimes to see after major events, people just, throw all their stuff on the ground. Fortunately, we always have in place teams that will make sure that the venues are cleaned up. But I want to appeal to everyone to do their part to make sure that we don't litter and that we keep our destination in a pristine condition.
Well, it may not be the locals. We have a lot of visitors to our show, so it's quite possible it's some of those. But like you say, it's everybody's business to ensure that the area is clean. Now, I want to take you back to the entertainment side that you mentioned on phase 2. Because there have been this suggestion, I cite myself, that perhaps a permanent stage could have been built in that section, so that when there's entertainment, the banner or the DJ, whatever it is, could, that's the area for them. I noticed that some businesses have their own little thing going, but there's a belief, and I strongly believe so as well, that a permanent stage in that area would have gone a long way in creating more entertainment. Your thoughts?
I'm not sure I totally agree with you. I think we just have enough space to make sure that we have a good flow of traffic, because especially when you have large events in that area, we have over 100 parking spaces between MGR and
I think they were thinking more on the seaside of it, the stand side.
On this,
Yeah, the stand side facing the east, close to where Dean also does be operating.
one of the reasons that wasn't done is because we have to bear in mind that anything that is close to the beach is subject to erosion when we have a storm. So
That's true.
it would be very risky to invest to put that kind of infrastructure. And then if we have a storm or we have severe beach erosion, then it gets damaged.
Okay.
So
Okay, understood.
so that is why we encourage people when you have big events, you come up to the park.
It's your way of getting them to go in the park instead of understood.
Yes.
Now you spoke earlier of the drainage, but we are in the hurricane season, and the drainage has really not been tested as yet, and we hope it never gets tested because we know the situation there. But how confident are you that we'll be able to sustain at least major rough seas in that area?
We have, even though we haven't had any hurricanes or any direct strikes from storms so far for this hurricane season, and I really hope that we don't have any, especially in this first year. I know that we have had some very heavy rains, and based on what I've seen, the drains stood up very well. One of the things that we have realized is the mouth of Shallogat, it's very important to keep that open. So that's one of the aspects of the maintenance that we will have to make sure that we keep. But once the mouth is open, then the water from Shallogat will flow out, and then it will tend not to spill over into MGR Park, as has happened once or twice in the past, or into that new area that we just developed.
You know that a whole lot of persons who are listening to this conversation at this time knows nothing about Shallogat. So you've got to be a little more specific as to where Shallogat is.
Okay, Shallogat is a natural drainage watercourse, which is on the immediate southern side. When I say southern side,
The left-hand
Charlestown,
side, right?
the Charlestown end of the new development that we have there at Phyllis Beach.
Okay. Another thing I observe is that the staff at the park is outstanding in their bright yellow, but the security guard on the beach as a maroon, you could hardly make them out sometimes. Is that a deliberate ploy or?
No, it's not deliberate. As a matter of fact, as I speak, we're in the process of doing some revamping of our security unit, such that we're going to have one unit throughout the ministry. So we're going to change the uniform, and we'll have something of, as you mentioned, you didn't like the maroon colors. I don't know if that's your personal dislike, but I do understand you're trying to make the point in terms of the uniform being something a bit conspicuous. So we're in the process of working on that. The team has already identified some colors, and I can guarantee you that they would be a lot more conspicuous than what we have at the moment.
Okay, understood. You spoke earlier of the intention of increasing the staff, at least in that particular area. Any idea when, and if there are persons who are listening who may be interested, what's the criteria to be?
I'm thinking that within, probably by the end of this month or early next month, we should be able to officially open. I don't have a date yet, so that date would have to be decided by the powers that be. But I would want to think that by early next month, the very latest, we should be able to officially open that area. In terms of staffing, we have already done some interviews, so we have already identified some persons who will be working in the new area.
Okay, great. Now, what has been the response been like from the restaurant owners operating in that area with the beautification and upgrades of the the whole area? What was the response?
Yeah, very satisfied for several reasons. One, during the process, they were extensively consulted. So we took a lot of their ideas. I mean, they're the ones who live there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very important for us to hear what they had to say. And we were able to incorporate a lot of the ideas that they suggested in terms of parking, in terms of the flow of traffic, in terms of, the general layout, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we had to, in terms of where their plots were and how that interacted with the road, sometimes there had to be some give and take in order to make the road straight or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
But suffice it to say, our restaurateurs in Penis Beach, they have been very satisfied. They really like the fact that they have a lot more parking. I mean, we have a dedicated parking lot between the park and between Double Deuce and Lime. There's a really large park, and then there's another one over by the bathroom, and we have parking space on the seaside, seaward of Zanzi and the other bar. So they're very satisfied in terms of the parking. It's much better lit, and when an area is well lit, you feel that better sense of security. We had a few issues to sort out. Whenever you have persons working together doing basically the same thing, sometimes you have to sort out a few things. But I think the restaurateurs and the other stakeholders have been very accommodating and very willing to work out the little differences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been able to move from point A to point B. So I really do commend the restaurateurs for the collaborative spirit. And working together can only be to their benefit to make Penis Beach a place where not only do you have good food, but you also have a good physical atmosphere.
Let me ask you this. Does the ministry has any plans to further develop the area in terms of additional features and in terms of allowing more businesses to operate in the area? Because with the upgrades and so much more human traffic, others may want a piece of the cake, so to speak.
Well, there's a concept called carrying capacity, which means that based on the resources available in a particular area and the number of persons that an area is expected to cater to,
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain cutoff point before you get environmental and other types of degradation. We feel at the ministry that Penis Beach has pretty much reached its carrying capacity in terms of the number of businesses
Mm-hmm.
on site. So we have had a number of requests for people to bring additional bars on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
but we have not been favorable to those events because we want to have a certain synergy between the number of restaurants available and the number of persons to patronize these bars.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want it to be too overcrowded, and then you get that sense of, we want it to be, you want to have a delicate balance. So we have not really, unless somebody is coming with something extremely novel and different, and it's something that we feel that we must have because it stands out so much from the others. But if somebody's coming with the same bar that everybody else has, then we will not be inclined to approve that. And speaking of approval, I want to point out to the general public, because there are one or two persons who have the habit of going on the beach and setting up temporary business. I want to point out that any sort of business that is to be done on Penis Beach, permission must be sought and granted by the Ministry of Tourism. And then we at the Ministry of Tourism, we then have to liaise with our colleague agencies in government, such as physical planning.
Mm-hmm.
So persons can't just come on the beach and just set up a tent and start doing business like that.
Mm-hmm.
They have to speak to us because we have to make sure that what is being introduced fits into the context of the whole thing that we're doing at Penis Beach.
Saying that there are one or two that look like they didn't go through that proper channels.
There are one or two that we're having conversations with, yes.
Okay, all right. Now, since the area has been so nicely upgraded, has there been any increase in the rental space or any intention of increasing the rental space?
Well, if you mean spaces that the ministry will create to rent out to stakeholders, we
Yes.
don't intend to do that anymore. That's not really a successful model. We have tried it. It's incredibly expensive, and we find it's better. There's a better buy-in, and people tend to take better care of the premises when it's their own premises. Yeah, so any new development that comes on Pinnis Beach, it will be the stakeholders' own premises, and they are the ones who will be building it and so on. The only variable in terms of rent would be the rental for the land which is governed by the land and housing, Nevis Land and Housing.
Okay. Now, all the room to the right has basically gone, but there's a lot of room to the left of the Pinnis development area. Any plans to do anything with that left side going towards Charlestown? There's a lot of room going down towards the Pinnis Beach Hotel. Any plans to?
Not at this point in time. As a matter of fact, I think that land is in legal dispute. So I remember hearing about a company called Newfound. So I think there's some kind of legal dispute that needs to be sorted out. So I'm not aware of any plans for that area to be developed at this point in time.
Okay. I want to move now, Mr. Hanley, to one of your other success story, which is the major upgrades that was done to the surroundings of the hot bath springs. And I must give you and the ministry and all who was involved in the work that was done tremendous credit for your foresight as well. I know you were one of the driving force behind this initiative, so outline for our listening and viewing audience some of the many features that has been added to enhance this particular area.
First of all, I want to thank Premier Brantley. This is something that he really wanted us to get done, and he has lent us a great deal of support, both in terms of making sure that the finances were available, and also in terms of moral, and institutional support. Because if our minister really wishes something to happen, it makes it a lot easier, because we are working in synergy. So I really want to thank the minister, my minister, Premier Brantley. He really believed in this project, and he pushed it forward, and he gave it a lot of support, and I'm really grateful for that. I also want to give some, as we say in local parlance, props to the project manager, the gentleman who is charged with the heritage sites on Nevis, Mr. Sylvester Mead. Some people know him better as Sly. He has gone above and beyond. Sometimes after 6 o'clock in the evening, he's there working. He has gone significantly beyond the call of duty. Many of the design and layout concepts at the bar stream were his, and I want to give him credit for it is something that he has always had at heart, and I really want to acknowledge his efforts. And what we wanted to achieve at Bath Stream was something that was aesthetically pleasing, something that's welcoming, something that's more functional. The Bath site arguably is the most visited tourist attraction on the island, and interestingly visited by both tourists and locals. So we felt that it was fitting to have it developed so that it is, world class. It has visitor amenities, etc. So we are nearing the end of the enhancements that we have been making. We only haven't opened it yet because there's some stakeholders that have not really been as timely in their delivery as we would have liked. But once we get everything in place, then we should, very shortly, we should be able to fully open to the general public.
Now you have a number of little huts in the yard as well. Give us a little idea as to what is supposed to be in these huts and so forth.
Okay, first of all, they are really huts.
Well,
I prefer to refer to them as shuttle buildings.
Shuttle, okay.
Okay, so let me take you from the main road. First of all, we have a welcome sign. You would have seen the stone arch by the main road. Yes. I hope you like it.
I liked it very much.
All right, and we have welcome to the Bath Hotel and Hot Springs, the birthplace of Caribbean hospitality. As you should be aware, Mr. Scarborough, the Bath Hotel is the very first hotel to be built in the Caribbean. So we thought it should have a grand entrance. So as you go inside the yard, on your immediate right, you would find a waterfall. well, an artificial waterfall, but the waterfall nonetheless. To fit that same water theme, there's both a waterfall and a fountain, right? And you have some areas where we're going to put some benches eventually. And the first building that you'll meet, which is a wood stained building, which has a six-sided shape, that is a gazebo. It's designed for outdoor seating, and there will be a little, it's a place where you could also have refreshment. The yellow building that you see shortly after you come in, that is the Welcome Center. That is our orientation center. So persons coming to this site should report their business there, and their destination images or images of the site that will be shown, and persons will get information like the temperature of the water in the different pools and that sort of thing. And if we decide to sell any merchandising we have a logo that is created for the site, so we are likely to have in very short order some merchandise material that we may sell in the center. The orange building is that will be the bathroom facilities. Okay. We have 3 cubicles inside there, one for persons who have accessibility challenges, persons in wheelchairs. It's wide enough to accommodate a wheelchair. That's the one that's closest to the door. We have a ramp, of course, going up to the bathrooms, so persons in wheelchairs can have access. The 3 buildings, by the way, are joined by concrete flagstone pathways, so it is easy. Even if somebody comes in a wheelchair, it is easy for them to get around within this area. So you have the accessibility bathroom closest to the door, then you have the female and the male, and each door is marked with, it has the signage. Then we have the white and natural wood stain building, which is closest to the pools. That one is our changing rooms. And that is because we have had a problem, well, let me call it an issue on site, where persons feel that it is their right to bathe in the nude on site. I want to point out that the law states that it is against the law to bathe to expose oneself in public. And so that is something that we are trying to discourage, which is why we went to the expense of providing changing rooms. So persons come to Bathstream, they want to change into some kind of swimwear, they can do that. There are 3 cubicles in that, so there's more than enough space for persons to change. You soak in the pool, you have your wet clothes, you want to change into something dry before you get into your vehicle or before you walk away. That's what the changing rooms are for. But what we don't want is for people to be bathing completely naked in the pools. You have to bear in mind that we have children around, and we also have guests who will be traumatized, for want of a better word, by seeing that sort of thing. But they may probably think of it as being primitive or something like that. So we want to elevate the experience at Bathstream a bit, which is why we have provided these rooms. And there's another small gazebo which is very close to the pool. So those are the buildings that we have. And we also have them set in tropical gardens. We spent quite a bit to install gardens which mimic a kind of tropical rainforest environment. So persons can feel very relaxed after they have soaked in the pools. We have also done some repairs to the pool shed, what we call the gazebo shed or the pool shed. We had to completely redo the roof because the wooden tiles have been on for 15 or 20 years and they were starting to deteriorate and leak. So we completely redid that, and we repainted it. And we painted the retaining wall around. We also did some repairs to the little pool beyond we had to take out some of the steps were broken. We had to get some new steps done. And we had to...
The pool that is not covered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And also we completely did the railings around the gazebo pool because when they were made of steel and over time with all the minerals in the water, etc., I guess that's what... And the heat of the water caused, I guess the chemical reaction caused the steel rails to get rusted out. So we've swapped those around. And we now have aluminum rails, which will be much more resistant. And we hope that will last. We totally took out those old rails and we put brand new ones. Thanks to Marcel, who lives, he has his business very close to where we are here at the studio. He did a very good job. And that in a nutshell is
About the
what we have
pathway.
done. Oh, and very importantly, what about the pathways?
The
Yeah.
driving.
Yes, I was about to come to that. We used to have a serious problem with dust. You know, all these coastal buses used to come in and, well, it was a dust storm. But we have asphalted the entryway, and we have 14 parking spaces, and that has significantly helped. We have a very wide radius at the end of, there's a roundabout in the middle, and even the largest coastal bus could easily make its way around without any difficulty. So these enhancements have really taken us from point A to point B
Sure.
at the Bath Hot Springs.
Now, for those persons who would like to visit the area as well as bathe in the hot springs, outline for them the do's and the don'ts while on the premises. You mentioned the nude bathing, of course, that's a don't.
All right, we are still in the process of fine-tuning the rules. Anybody who has visited the Malcolm Gishad Recreational Park will realize that in several locations we have the rules of the park. I think in about 1, 2, at least 3, 4 locations we have rules posted. At the playground, at the main entrance, and I think at the 2 northern entrances of MGR Park. We will also have rules rather, posted at the Bath Stream Heritage Site. Some of these rules, no littering, because we are an environmentally sensitive island, so we don't want people to just throw down their bottles and their paper and all of that. No littering. A serious problem that we have with people tend to use soap in the pools, and we discourage that. Especially the pool under the shed. No soap or no chemical products will be allowed in that pool. It is only a soaking pool. And the reason for that is, it's not really the best experience for somebody to have the water clouded with their body wash or their soap, and then the next person to come behind to have to bathe in, So we want to discourage the use of soap and similar products in the pools. We don't want people to be using glass. And that's a safety precaution, because if somebody has a glass bottle and it drops, then the person who comes behind could get injured by walking on the broken glass. We want it to be a family-friendly environment, so we don't want any unruly behavior, no fighting, no raucous behavior, and that sort of a thing. And we already spoke of no nudity.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of rules, of course, but what about security? Tell us a little about the security in that area, because if there's no security, kind of difficult to ensure that the rules are kept.
Once the upgraded areas are officially opened, we will have security, 24-hour security at Bath Street.
Okay, great. Now, are there any charges involved for the use of the hot springs or the surrounding facilities?
That's a very interesting question, and one that has stirred a lot of debate. I am in the process of finalizing that through discussions with stakeholders and with other persons. We have had various feedback from the general public. Some understand the enormity of the funding that it took to bring these upgrades. I think everybody is agreed that the upgrades have really moved things up a notch at Bath Street, and I think people realize, the kind of cost that is involved in upgrades. So some people don't mind, and there are other people who believe that it should be free for locals. The reality out there, though, is that I've been to many different places: St. Kitts, Dominica, St. Lucia, Trinidad, the United States, Canada, Europe, and in none of these other countries do you get these kinds of attractions for free. So the people of Nevis need to get away from this mentality where they think everything has to be for free. We may end up with some sort of a tiered system, but the bottom line is, I think if people expect a service, people expect the pools. I mean, if the pools are not cleaned and maintained and so on, they make a big fuss on social media, but it costs to maintain. So if persons expect superior service and good facilities, then they must be prepared to pay. I think it is only fair.
I think so as well. Now, Mr. Hanley, I want to focus your attention on the estates that the Ministry of Tourism is heavily involved in. And those are the Fothergills Estate and New River Estate. Quite a number of tourism-related activities has been going on these two estates, especially at Fothergills. Tell us a little about the reason behind this deliberate policy. It is especially at Fothergills. It seems to be there seems to be a plan in place for the development and the growth of that particular area.
Well, as you know, at the Nevis Heritage Village, which is located at Fothergills, it is a replica of a traditional Nevisian village. And in recent months, certainly over the last year, we have had a strong uptick in terms of visitation to the sites. The tour operators have been expressing increased interest in Heritage Village, and we have been having a number of tours there. We now have two businesses on site. We have a shop where local souvenirs are made available, and very importantly, we have a restaurant on site where traditional food is offered, and we have integrated that into some of the tours. So persons come on site, they see the old utensils and the old things, the dressers and all those things that you can remember from your grandmother talking to you about, or some of those things you would have seen. So they have that aspect where they have that step back in history, and you also have an opportunity to engage some of your other senses, smell and taste, so they can have a traditional, something from our traditional cuisine. So that is the direction that we're headed in. We have also had some weddings, quite a few weddings we have had at the Heritage Village. People love that rustic theme, and it serves as a very good backdrop. At New River, we want to offer an agro-tourism experience. What we want to do, we want to theme it on our agrarian journey. Nevis has been an agrarian society before we became primarily a tourism destination. So what were some of the earliest crops grown in Nevis? You had tobacco, indigo, then you had sugar, you had rum as an export, and you also had other crops like banana, gingerland, cotton ground. So we want to make an experience out of that at New River, and we are likely to start next fiscal cycle with at least some landscaping on the ground where we'll plant some of these crops. So that's the general direction: agritourism at New River and that Heritage Village immersive experience at New River.
So good.
At Fothergills.
Now, you started some work at the Eden Brown Estate as well. Has that work been completed, and is it your intention to have a similar set of activities at that location as well, like Fothergills?
Eden Brown is an interesting site. The ministry continues to maintain it in terms of the landscaping, making sure the grass is cut and so on. But we have a curious arrangement at that site in which the Eden Brown community group, they are the ones who are responsible for developing the experience. They would have presented some plans to us that have to do with sort of recreating that story with the haunting of New River and anything associated with Julia Huggins and those persons who lived or worked at Eden Brown. So they're in the process of developing that, but we will continue to maintain the site until such time.
Okay, great. Now, the Artisan Village at the Penny's Industrial Site, that's another one of the areas that the ministry has earmarked, not only for some of its function, but as a major tourist attraction as well. Many of the visitors to our shows, as well as citizens and residents of Nevis, can be seen quite frequently purchasing arts and crafts and other souvenirs of Nevis at that location. Are there any plans to perhaps further develop that area to include more tourist attraction?
Well, we plan to further support and develop the Artisan Village itself. In terms of adding additional attractions in the area, not at the moment. But I want to say that in terms of supporting what is going on at the Artisan Village, in the past we have done some art and craft training. So we have exposed persons to leather craft and basket making and coconut craft to develop their skills. Because what we want, Mr. Scarborough, at the Artisan Village, we don't want persons to just sell items that are made in China and then you just write Nevis on it. We want persons to sell items that are authentic, that are made with real Nevis products. So when somebody buys a turtle or when they buy something, it's actually made in Nevis. So that is what we really are looking forward to. We also encourage a diversity in products. We don't want a situation where everybody's selling the same T-shirt, and so we always encourage somebody to come up with something new and fresh and different.
Okay, great. Now, our tourism industry is growing with each passing year, which means we have to look at other ways to enhance the visitor experience, not only in terms of entertainment or sporting activities, but in terms of showcasing our local history as well. I'm sure that must be something the ministry and the NTA seriously considering.
Yes, you mentioned sports tourism. There's a lot of scope in sports tourism, a lot of money to be made. We have seen strong interest in things like the cross-channel swim, the Nevis Marathon, etc. There's a lot of potential on the island, but I think there needs to be a more targeted approach. And we also need to invest more in our sporting facilities. Even in terms of athletics, football, etc., there is a lot of scope for that to develop further. We also want to develop community-based tourism and homestays because that speaks to the authenticity of the tourism experience. We started the homestay experience during C50, and the response has been not only from a business point of view, but also from an experiential point of view. The response has been very encouraging. So that's something we want to further encourage. We spoke earlier to agritourism. That's something we also want to push. Food tours. That's something that's taken a serious trend in many parts of the world. And that's something that we have been trying and will continue to try to promote. And of course, we also want to make a bigger push for the orange economy where we have more events and similar activities.
Street signs and village signs and further naming of some of the buildings of some of our local icons has been identified by many as some of the ways in which the local history can be told to our visitors as well. Is that something the ministry is considering perhaps on a broader scale? Because I know you do some signs and so right now, but in terms of honoring local icons with the names being put on streets and buildings and etc.
Signage and interpretation are a very important part of tourism product development. You have observed in your comments that whenever we develop a new product, the two most recent being MGR Park and Bath Street, signage is very important, and we invest heavily into some informative and aesthetically pleasing signs. So that's very important. It is always very important to recognize the contributions of local persons. We have been having some conversations with our colleagues at physical planning in terms of developing signs, even in terms of developing the whole address system, so that persons wouldn't have to say that road across there, but the road would have a specific name. And there's so many persons who have contributed significantly to the development of our community that we have a lot of persons to choose from to name a street after. Scarborough Avenue, for example.
Boulevard.
Scarborough Boulevard. Okay, well, you have a lot of options.
Now, we're coming close to the end, Mr. Hanley. I wanted to ask you, like I said, we are coming close to the start of the next tourism season, and will we be seeing any new initiatives coming from the Ministry of Tourism for the upcoming season? Any new initiatives on the cards for 2025?
Well, we would want to develop some new products because it is always good to have diversification in our product. So we encourage entrepreneurship. We realize that we can't do it all by ourselves. There are people up there with absolutely wonderful ideas. So we always encourage that atmosphere where persons can come to us and say, well, hey, this is a new idea, and wherever we can support them, we do. I also want to say that we will continue to develop our products. So we have done quite a bit on Bath Stream. but we also want to do some more. I would like to see the original bathhouse, for example, being restored. I'm not sure if we'll be able to handle that during our next fiscal cycle, but it's something that I'd like to see. I spoke already about New River. That's a project that I see a lot of potential in, and I would really like to see that come up as well. But very importantly, developing our human capital, I think that is a very important part of our tourism product.
Okay, great. Well, Mr. Hanley, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening, and I want to give you the final word for our listeners and viewers.
I want to thank everyone who has been supportive of the ministry. Before I end, I want to quickly salute our young Minister of Tourism who traveled to the Cayman Islands and did us absolutely proud. She was the regional winner. She competed among at least 13 other Caribbean nations, Jamaica, Barbados, and all these other countries, and she emerged the champion. So she's in the likes of people like Roger Williams and Neela Jones. So Nevis was very proud of her passionate and her informative presentation. Shout out to her mom, Nikisha Warner, and her dad, Mr. Warner, our good taxi driver. And we want to wish our junior Minister of Tourism all the very best in her future endeavors.
And Mr. Hanley, I want to thank you very much once again for taking time out of your schedule and to join you in congratulating the young tourism lady as well. Folks, we have come to the end of another edition of our Government at Work program. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming. Then have a pleasant night's rest. Good night.